ग्लोबल मीडिया एजुकेशन काउंसिल की ग्लोबल कम्युनिकेशन एजुकेशन कॉन्क्लेव के 75 दिवसीय इस अभिनव अभियान के तहत आज 67th डे पर मैं आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत अभिनंदन करता हूं। कोविड काल की चुनौतियों के बीच में एक अनोखा संकल्प लिया, किस तरह से 75 दिन की हमारी ये यात्रा, जिसमें देश दुनिया के मीडिया शिक्षक, शोधार्थी और नीति निर्माता इस अभियान के साथ जुड़े। उसी क्रम में आज ये जो आयोजन किया जा रहा है, जिसका विषय है रोल ऑफ मीडिया इन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट एंड पीस बिल्डिंग, प्रॉस्पेक्ट्स एंड चैलेंजेस, और इस सत्र का मॉडरेट कर रही हैं एक युवा मीडिया शिक्षक, शोध अनुसंधान के क्षेत्र में निरंतर कर्मरत डॉक्टर कृति सिंह। डॉक्टर कृति सिंह, इनके व्यक्तित्व के अनेक आयाम हैं। यूं शारदा यूनिवर्सिटी में सहायक प्रोफेसर के रूप में कार्य कर रही हैं, लेकिन राष्ट्रीय अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर इनका जुड़ाव अनेक संस्थाओं के साथ है। एक शिक्षक के साथ साथ ये एक रिसर्चर, ऑथर और सोशल वर्कर के रूप में भी निरंतर सक्रिय है। इजराइल स्थित द इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ साइबर पॉलिसी स्टडीज के साइबर ब्यूरो में आप नॉन रेजिडेंट सीनियर रिसर्च फेलो के रूप में जुड़ी हुई हैं। वहीं कैप्टन आयुष पुरुषार्थ फाउंडेशन के साथ भी आप सक्रिय रूप से संबद्ध हैं। अल्ट्रमिस्ट सेंटर फॉर रिसर्च, ट्रेनिंग एंड डेवलपमेंट की ऑनरेरी डायरेक्टर के रूप में भी आप काम कर रही हैं। डॉक्टर कृति के व्यक्तित्व का जो अनूठा पहलू है, इनका पूरा परिवार सेना से जुड़ा हुआ है। सामरिक दृष्टि से देश की सीमाओं की रक्षा करने का दायित्व कुछ पीढ़ियों से इनके परिवार का जुड़ाव रहा है। हमारे लिए सौभाग्य की बात है कि वो एक ऐसे परिवार से हैं जिन्होंने इस देश की रक्षा के लिए, इस देश की एकता, अखंडता, सुरक्षा के लिए अपनी शहादत और बलिदान दिए हैं। और शायद यही कारण है कि मिलिट्री और मीडिया रिलेशनशिप, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट रिपोर्टिंग, टेररिज्म, काउंटर टेररिज्म, इंफॉर्मेशन वारफेयर आदि अनेक ऐसे एरिया हैं जिनमें आपकी गहन रुचि रही है, और इन्हीं क्षेत्रों पे आप लगातार लिखती पढ़ती रही। यूं देश के अनेक प्रमुख अकादमिक संस्थानों के साथ आप शिक्षक के रूप में संबद्ध रही। शारदा यूनिवर्सिटी में आने के पहले आप GD गोयनका यूनिवर्सिटी, जगन्नाथ इंटरनेशनल मैनेजमेंट स्कूल, जयपुर नेशनल यूनिवर्सिटी, YFWCA जैसे अनेक प्रतिष्ठित विश्वविद्यालयों में अध्यापन कार्य करती रहीं। इसके अतिरिक्त DD न्यूज और टाइम्स ग्रुप के भी कुछ माध्यमों के साथ आपका सक्रिय जुड़ाव रहा। जर्नलिज्म में मास्टर्स डिग्री के साथ साथ इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस और बिजनेस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, मीडिया मैनेजमेंट के स्पेशलाइजेशन के साथ आपने अपने पाठ्यक्रम पूरे किए। आपकी 2 पुस्तकें प्रमुख रहीं, मीडिया डिस्कशंस, कंटेम्प्रेरी मीडिया डिस्कोर्सेस ऑफ 21st सेंचुरी, और 2020 में ये पुस्तक प्रकाशित हुई। और दूसरी पुस्तक कंटेम्प्रेरी मीडिया डिस्कोर्सेस, ट्रेंड्स, इश्यूज एंड प्रोस्पेक्ट्स, इसका प्रकाशन हुआ। और विशेष बधाई, जिस सत्र का वो संचालन कर रही हैं, उसी सत्र में आपकी सद्य प्रकाशित नवप्रकाशित पुस्तक कारगिल रिव्यू कमेटी रिपोर्ट एंड इंडियन मीडिया मिलिट्री रिलेशनशिप, जर्नी एंड इम्पैक्ट। तो इनका आप अंदाज लगा सकते हैं कि किस प्रकार से इनका मिलिट्री इश्यूज में गहरी रुचि रही है, और इसमें ये निरंतर शोध कार्य कर रही है। राष्ट्रीय अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर अनेक शोध पत्रों के प्रकाशन से आप जुड़ी रहीं, और संयोग से मेरी पहली मुलाकात 2018 में जयपुर में ऑल इंडिया मीडिया टीचर्स जो हमने कॉन्फ्रेंस किया था, उसमें आपकी उपस्थिति थी। अनेक पुरस्कारों से आप सम्मानित हो चुकी हैं। 2021 में आपको बेस्ट रिसर्चर ऑफ द ईयर पुरस्कार मिला, और वहीं शारदा यूनिवर्सिटी वाइस चांसलर सर्टिफिकेट ऑफ ऑनर इन रिकॉग्निशन ऑफ आउटस्टैंडिंग परफॉर्मेंस एंड रिसर्च, उससे भी आपको सम्मानित किया गया। इसके अतिरिक्त हाल ही में आपको लाइफ टाइम मेंबरशिप, ऑनरेरी मेंबरशिप दी गई इंटरनेशनल फिल्म एंड टेलीविजन रिसर्च सेंटर और एशियन एकेडमी ऑफ फिल्म एंड टेलीविजन यूनिवर्सिटी डॉक्टर संदीप मरवाहा के माध्यम से। तो मीडिया के डिफरेंट प्लेटफॉर्म्स के साथ आप सक्रिय रूप से जुड़ी रहीं। अनेक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठनों से आपका निरंतर जुड़ाव रहा है, जिसमें IIQM, CENJOWS, यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ एल्बर्ट कनाडा सेंटर फॉर जॉइंट वारफेयर स्टडीज, इंटरनेशनल एसोसिएशन फॉर मीडिया एंड कम्युनिकेशन रिसर्च, IAMCR, इंटरनेशनल एकेडमिक फोरम, IAFOR, जापान एंड क्वालिटीज रिसर्च एसोसिएशन ऑफ मलेशिया, अनेक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठनों से आप जुड़ी हुई हैं। मैं डॉक्टर कृति सिंह को आमंत्रित करता हूं आज के इस सत्र के संचालन के लिए। डॉक्टर कृति।
धन्यवाद सर और नमस्कार। मेरा सौभाग्य है कि आपने मेरा इंट्रोडक्शन करा है इस सेशन में। A very good evening to one and all. I am very grateful to Dr. Sanjeev for your kind words and setting the stage for today's session. I am extremely overwhelmed to get this opportunity to address you all on the auspicious occasion of 67th session of the world's longest running media education event, Global Communication Education Conclave, GCEC. It's a unique 75 days event involving Indian and global academics and profession, which intends to celebrate this diversity with scholarly contribution from varied perspectives. In today's session, our focus is on role of media in conflict and peace building, prospects and challenges. As the moderator of this session, I will quickly present before you an overview of today's session. We will have an opening address by our session chair, Dr. M. Neelamalarkar. She is Associate Professor, Department of Media Sciences, Anna University. This will be followed by our address by our chief guest, Sri Satanshu Ranjan Karsa. He is former Principal Director General of Press Information Bureau and Principal Spokesperson of Government of India. Subsequently, we will have felicitation ceremony of Eminent Media Educator Award, and we will be awarding Dr. Gauri Chakrabarti today. This will be followed by a book release titled Kargil Review Committee Report, an Indian Media Military Relationship, Journey and Impact. We also have a corporate address speaker from Mr. Mayank Singh. He is Special Correspondent Defense, the New Indian Express. We also have a keynote address by our foreign speaker, Dr. Professor Tal Pavel. He is founder and director of Cyber Bureau, the Institute for Cyber Policy Studies, Israel. And the closing remarks will be by session, followed by vote of thanks by me. Without further ado, I take this privilege to introduce today's session chair, Dr. M. Neelamkar. She is presently working as Associate Professor in Anna University. Her topic of PhD research was the coverage of Kargil War by Indian media, and hers was the first PhD to be awarded in India on war and media. She has total teaching experience of 20 years. She has published research articles in various national and international journals. She has presented in a number of conferences, seminars, and for this purpose, she has been invited in India as well as in abroad. Her specialization includes war and media, women in media, social media, children and media. She has authored a number of books, including Media Law and Ethics, Nationalism, National Integration in Tamil Films, Kargil Revisited, Images and Perception of Kargil War After 10 Years, Media Coverage of 26/11 Mumbai Terror Attacks, and Radio Program Production. She has also authored a fiction titled An Endless Refuge. May I most humbly request Dr. Neelamalkar to kindly present her opening remarks for the session.
Thanks, Dr. Kriti Singh, and a very good evening to all of you here. It gives me immense pleasure to meet all of you here in this wonderful platform. And the topic of today's session is role of media in conflict and peace building, prospects and challenges. A very good topic indeed, given the present times. And yes, the role of media in conflict and peace building, and most importantly, prospects and challenges. So obviously the media and conflict It offers a lot of excellent prospects as well as innumerable challenges to the journalists who are covering the war as well as any other conflict. In any war, truth is said to be the first casualty. At the same time, the war coverage is quite exciting, especially from the audience viewpoint. The TRP ratings go up. People, the audience, they get glued to the TV screen and nowadays to mobile screens also. So the interest shown by audience to watch the war live is much similar to the interest shown by cricket lovers towards live IPL matches. But still, war or conflict for that matter is a serious issue. It can't be covered in the way any IPL or any other sport event is covered. So that presents a lot of challenges to the journalist and also in a way to the military and the different experts who are dealing with media and audience. Maybe to start with the Indian context. In the Indian context, if you take the wars, Kargil War was the first war which was very widely covered, even though India has fought full-fledged wars before that, and Kargil War was a limited one. It was not actually declared as a war, even though we call it by that name. So it was a war where the journalists and the military personnel, they started mingling with each other, and the war was brought live to the audience of the entire country. To sum it up, it was described by one of the commentators. The coverage was described by one of the commentators as it was Kargil by day and Kargil by night. That much was the coverage, that much was the importance given by the journalists who covered the war. They got excited in a way because it was the first opportunity for the journalists to mingle with the military, and they saw the war from a very close quarter. And for the audience of the country, before the Kargil War, we got to witness Gulf War live, almost live, but the coverage was by BBC and CNN. So when our own media was given the chance to cover, it actually made people realize. It made people realize these sacrifices made by the army people for the country. But also it raised a lot of controversies around that time. So not just war, we are talking about conflict on the whole, I understand. So talking from conflict angle, a situation which raises conflict, and in a country like India with people of various backgrounds, conflict arises now and then. And media, it's a challenge for the media to show restraint. So when the unfortunate incident of the demolition of Babri Masjid happened, the media showed it. Actually, the Indian media comparatively showed a lot of restraint, while BBC almost showed it live. BBC showed the event live, almost live. So it had in Mumbai, actually, the police, the first job, one of the first jobs done by police was to cut off the cable lines. They understood that, the live coverage of the demolition by the BBC actually is creating a lot of problem. The people who were quiet and who were shocked by the event, on seeing the live coverage by BBC, it actually raised the religious sentiments and it led to conflicts among people. Once the administration of Maharashtra, when they realized it, they actually asked the police people to cut off the cable lines so that, the coverage will not raise the religious sentiments and it will not escalate the conflict. But the Indian media showed constraint. I mean, there were constraints for Indian media because at that time, we had very limited private channels and largely it was covered by Doordarshan. I mean, the television sector was with the government-owned Doordarshan. So automatically there was restraint. But just comparing it with Gujarat, the religious problem in Gujarat that happened in 2000s, The media, the print, the electronic, all the media, they went all out to show everything. They did not realize that showing the conflict will again lead to, it will raise the religious sentiments of the people, and it will lead to conflicts among the people of the country, where there are many religions followed, where many gods are worshipped. They have, the media literally has forgotten it. The Indian media, it also started, imagining itself like BBC, but BBC has no direct connection with the, other than, the viewership and other things. They are not so much bothered about, they need not be bothered about the sentiments or the law and order problems in the country of India. But the Indian media has to be, but they forgot. Similarly, the coverage of Mumbai terror attack again showed that, there was a fight, there was a competition among the TV channels to go one up. Which channel is going to get more of TRP ratings? That was the actual competition between them. Later on, they regretted. I think Rajiv Sardesai, he went on air, he openly confessed. At that time, we did not think about it. When the terror attack was happening, among us, we had a competition. We want to win the race. We forgot how it is going to help. If you are going to show everything, it's going to help the terrorists in a way. That was actually forgotten by us. It was one of the direct statements given by Mr. Rajiv Sardesai. So we can see from the time of, from 1992, there was a steady decline. 1992 was the year when the demolition of Bab Masjid happened. So from that time, the difference in the media scenario in India was the number of channels, they went up. And as of now, we have high-tech coverage of any war and any conflict. So obviously the prospects are more. They can cover it very well. They can show everything live. So the prospects are on the rise. There are so many devices. From TV, people have moved on to mobile, new media. Likewise, the media also has developed its potential, its technicalities, everything has improved. But the media on the whole, they like to convert those prospects to their commercial benefit. At the same time, we need to learn from Western media, how they cover their conflicts, their wars, and how we cover our conflicts and our wars. When it comes to any problem, any conflict in India, BBC and CNN, they have no problem in showing everything. But when a conflict, when a problem, when a disaster, when it is happening in their own country, they don't even show the bloodshed. Even the cruelest of events, they don't show, they edit. They indulge in self-censorship. In a way, they are very ethical when it comes to their own coverage. Dr. Preeti Singh was mentioning about the seminars I took part. Just one I want to, which really one incident which really still remains in my memory. That happened long back in 2010. It was about happened in UK. The seminar was about the terror coverage by media. So there was a presentation by journalists from BBC regarding how BBC covered the Mumbai terror attack. And that time he was mentioning that each and everything, whatever happened there, we were covering. And our MD, our CEO was giving us the instruction that we need to give everything. So every minute we were updating, every hour we were updating him of the happenings. So he was very proudly talking about their coverage. I just asked him one question. If it had happened in your country, if a problem like this, if a terror attack like this, if it has happened in your own country, would you have covered everything? Would you have shown everything that had happened? And we have to accept his honesty. He immediately said that, no, if it had happened in UK, we would not have done the same. We would not have shown everything. So, after that, I had nothing to argue. Then he very openly came out with his stand and his channel stand. So the Indian media has to learn. We can call it Western bias. Yes, there is Western bias in conflict coverage. At the same time, Indian media has to learn how to cover a conflict, how to show everything. How not to show everything. At the same time, how to cover the disaster, the man-made disaster, the conflict, war, etc. So that is actually the challenge. The challenges are ethical based because, once upon a time, we had technical challenges. We had problems with technology. Now the media has improved a lot throughout the world. In many parts of the world, including India, the technology, technicalities, the devices, the means of capturing people, the means of reaching, everything has become quite easier. There was a time when Doordarshan was more famous for its slide, sorry for the break. They used to show it very often in its earlier days, in 1980s. They will say, sorry for the break. The slide will come. It will be keep on appearing for a long time. Sometimes it goes up to 15 or 20 minutes because they had technical problem in broadcasting. But from that, Indian media actually has come a very long way. Everywhere, the technicalities, technology, the devices, everything has improved. But the challenges are there. The challenges are based on ethics. But it's very easy to say, given that, it's very easy to say, be ethical, don't be commercially motivated. But it's not practically possible also. We need to understand it's not practically possible to be very ethical because there is competition at the highest level. There is the necessity to show the results. They have to run on profit. They can't run on loss like a government-sponsored channel where government is there, government is backing up, and the government channels or the government supported channels are there for public service. But a private channel, the CEO they have invested a lot. The owners have invested a lot and they have to show the results, which we have to agree. So there should be a balance between the commercial motive and the ethical prospects. So the challenges are there ethically. At the same time, how to deliver commercially without giving up much on ethical aspects. That is the actual challenge. And today we are going to have a wonderful session. And we have got in the list of speakers and a variety of topics. So like you all, I'm also very eagerly looking forward to all those, speakers and their wonderful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for setting the stage for today's session. Now I take this honor and pride to introduce our today's chief guest, Shri Satanshu Ranjan Karsar. Shri Satanshu Ranjan Karsar is a 1983 batch officer of Indian Information Service. He was the 27th principal, He was 27th principal spokesperson of Government of India and Principal Director General of Press Information Bureau in 2018 and 19. In a career spanning nearly 40 years, Shikhar has worked in key positions in various media units of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. He anchored the publicity of several key ministries like Environment and Forest, Rural Development, Human Resource Development, Science and Technology, Atomic Energy and Science before joining the Directorate of Public Relations, Ministry of Defense as the principal spokesperson in August 2005. He has the distinction of being the longest serving spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense for over a decade at a stretch. Now I request most humbly our chief guest of today's session, Shri Satanshu Ranjan sir, to kindly address the session.
Very much, Dr. Kriti, for that handsome introduction. And in fact, I was listening very carefully. Dr. M. Nilamalar, her setting the tone for this evening's discussion. Now, first of all, let me welcome Dr. Tal Pavel, Founder Director of Cyber, the Institute for Cyber Policy Studies, Israel, eminent media educator, Dr. Gauri D. Chakravarti, Professor Sanjeev Vanawat, my old friend, Mr. Mayank Singh, if he has already joined in, defense correspondent of the New Indian Express, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. In fact, at the very outset, let me congratulate Dr. Chakrabarti for being conferred the Eminent Media Educator Award, and Dr. Kriti Singh for the release of a landmark book on military media relations later this evening. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be part of this momentous event and also take part in this discussion on the topic, the role of media in conflict and peace building, prospects and challenges. To be honest, this topic is strewn with as many minefields as there are in the Russia-Ukraine war or the special military operations, a description depending on which side of the conflict you are in. I was listening very carefully, very carefully to Dr. Neelam Mallar about the performance of the Indian media. In fact, in some of those events that she mentioned, especially the demolition of the Babri Masjid or the disputed complex, as they call it, in 1992. In fact, that was the day when I was the editor-in-chief of Doordarshan News, and it was a day which we can't forget, because that's the day when we had worked throughout the day to collect all the visuals of what happened over there. And we had also created an analysis and also a narrative to go with it to broadcast. But the authorities just half an hour or so before the direction comes from the government that, well, you cannot show even a second of footage. And which is like very disappointing as a broadcaster when you are going and thinking that, and I mean, here is something which is being edited outside the newsroom. And that is why we decided, okay, the instruction is that you cannot show any visuals, but we can give a good narrative. And our team actually worked on the narrative to kind of give to the people what actually happened that day. They have a right to know of such a momentous event which has taken place, and that is how we went about it. But I can also share it with you that the authorities did not like that, because next day, I mean, some comment was given that Doordarshan is now mature enough to become a private organization. And actually, the course of events that you see, the liberalization and the technological changes when a satellite television came and private channels, they came. And that's a long story. I'll not go to that at the moment. But my focus right now is on the Russia-Ukraine war, which I'm following it very closely, because of my dual interest in media and also in military matters. And in fact, the winning headline so far in my consideration for this conflict is very sharp and simple, but it speaks volumes in terms of the tectonic changes that have taken place in warfare. That headline read like this: guns, tanks, and Twitter. How Russia and Ukraine are using social media as the war drags on. Indeed, this is a major watershed in the history of mass communication, where the social media has become the primary source of information around the world for the news-hungry audiences as they try to make a sense of what is happening over there, the 4 Ws, 1H of the news that we are so familiar with. In fact, if we look at it, the history of communications, every war has used the available technology that was there. I mean, if you look at the First World War, it was the newspapers, which was the dominant mass media at the time, and interpersonal communication. In fact, the way the turn of events took place in the United States after the setting up of the Krill Commission, and the way they managed the propaganda through various means, including interpersonal communication, which came through the 4-minute man. I mean, this was a very creative concept at that time, because if you remember the film rolls in the theaters, at that time, they used to be changed. After one roll is finished, you have to load the second roll and play it. And that takes about 4 minutes time to make this change. Now, during these 4 minutes, if somebody can stand up over there and can give a speech, right? I mean, electrifying speech, but 4 minutes available. And that is how they trained many speakers who would speak during those 4 minutes to inculcate the sense of nationalism in the people. That was very effective. Now we come to the Second World War. By that time, radio was the dominant kind of medium, mass medium. And we know very well how it was used by John Churchill, Winston Churchill, sorry, and Hitler. I mean, that was the kind of medium that was used to the fullest. Now, coming to this phase in history, we find that the social media is being used to communicate. It is also being used by the governments of the two countries to set the agenda for wider reporting. I mean, we can see that on a real-time basis when the Ukraine president tweets and from wherever he is located, and he is talking to the entire world. And similar thing is happening from the Russian side. And in this, this is actually an asymmetric kind of conflict in which one country is, in terms of real military power, is much less than another country, which is actually a big power. But a successful media account can be used as a way, as a weapon against the adversary with having many guns and tanks, but giving a punch. And this we have seen the way on a day-to-day basis that is being used by the governments, and especially, I mean, the Ukrainian government to get support for its side. But along with it is coming a lot of misinformation which is being peddled to camouflage the truth. I'm reminded, of course, of Winston Churchill once again when he said in 1943, amidst the Second World War, in a wartime, truth is so precious that she should be attended by bodyguard of lies. Now the lies are covering it, around it, and the truth is there, which has to be protected. It's very, very precious. Now, given this situation, media outlets generally, they follow the government's policy and while narrating the conflict and reporting from the conflict zones. But there comes the role of the media, whether it is trying to solve a problem or it is going to aggravate it. Now, while talking about that, I'll turn my attention to the performance of the mainstream television media in India at the moment. And to be honest, I'm really distressed by the fact that many times when there are social tensions, there is so little or no attempt which is made to find the middle grounds in conflicts and for conflict resolution. It seems peace, concept of peace is not a TRP material at the moment. I mean, it is the more attractive part is the conflict part of it, the differences part of it. And that is being highlighted in the media. But I think that there is no escape from peace because a society is built, actually progresses on the foundation of peace. Especially when we are now passing, I mean, we are at a stage when we are just kind of recovering from the deadly impact of the COVID-19. And there are so many problems which we are beset with. Now, the role of the media, how does it see conflicts in isolated pockets, and how they amplify it so that they get the TRP, or for whatever reason, that is really distressing. I should say that media plays a very significant role in reporting conflict, and we have seen it can foment a conflict, as radio and television journalism did it in Rwanda or Bosnia. But it has also the power to douse the fire. The nature of that role, however, depends on whether a particular media is looking at an event as a subscriber of the conflict, or it is looking at as an agent of peace. I mean, that largely decides how framing and agenda setting would be done by the media. The questions you ask and the questions you do not ask, your selection of interviewees broadly show where a journalist is going at. And there is urgent need today to integrate knowledge of conflict analysis, conflict resolution, and conflict prevention into journalistic training and education. I must confess that this aspect was never part of our training when we did that nearly 40 years ago. And what is more important is that social responsibility has to be built into the profession of journalism. And this must be a kind of part of their education and training right in the beginning, so that they know that. Peace journalism provides an alternative professional paradigm for the journalists. It enables them to view, interpret, source, and narrate conflicts in ways that seeks non-violent responses in the society. I think such an approach would ultimately help transform conflict and lead it towards a resolution. The way the journalists can educate, inform, correct misperceptions, build confidence, and can offer credible options for resolution. So conflict resolution is not solely the responsibility of the authorities. A large part of that responsibility also comes on the media, which should work towards it. And that can happen, if we move out of our individual silos towards a synergized media strategy where the journalists, educators, peace workers, and researchers, they come together. And their voices should also find place in mainstream media for wider reach and acceptance. I take this aspect very seriously because many a time I see on the television debates where it is like provoking a person and actually trying to figure out what is the problem and how we can resolve it amicably. I shall conclude with a quotation from the Norwegian sociologist and the principal founder of the discipline of peace and conflict studies, Johan Vincent Galtung, from his mini theory of peace. In fact, he has been a champion of peace journalism. And he says a very profound thing. The basic point is that peace is a relation between two or more parties. The parties may be inside a person, a state, or a nation, a region, or a civilization, pulling in different directions. Peace is not a property of one party alone, but a property of the relation between parties. The journalistic effort should be directed towards achieving it, and that needs a lot of courage and support from all sides to achieve it. Now, talking about courage, I must compliment Dr. Kriti Singh for bringing out a brilliant book on military and media relations, keeping the Kargil Committee report as the context. As many of you would recall, the Kargil Review Committee was tabled in the Parliament on the 23rd of February 2000, a few months after the conclusion of the conflict. The country's security architecture has undergone massive changes as per the proposals contained in the report. But what really strikes me about that report is that for the first time, it looked at the military media relations in depth and suggested changes. The world of media and communication technologies have undergone sea change since then. But the framework that was provided by the KRC report was implemented by the MOD, the Ministry of Defense, innovating on many of the concepts. That's a fascinating story, which every journalist reporting on national security must read. Researchers and educators will find this book very useful. For good measure, she has also included a chapter on the growth of military media relations in the United States, which actually does a lot of research, and it's commendable that Kriti has bringing out the theoretical foundations on such relations. A word of appreciation for Dr. Gauri Chakravarti also for a remarkable contribution. I mean, actually, to be very frank, I didn't know so much about her. Today, I read about all the things that she has done. I mean, it is phenomenal, absolutely, ma'am. And how do you find time to do so many things? As a filmmaker, an artist, and an academician, this is really profound. So thank you very much. And it was a pleasure interacting with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for this very insightful details that you have given us about Indian media-military relationship and media in conflict. Now we move towards the Eminent Media Educator Award. May I humbly request Professor Dr. Sanjeev to introduce Dr. Gauri D. Chakrabarti, Professor, Times School of Media, Bennett University.
धन्यवाद डॉक्टर कृति। जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं, इस श्रृंखला में प्रत्येक एपिसोड में हम देश के किसी एक प्रमुख मीडिया शिक्षक को सम्मानित करते हैं जिन्होंने अपने करियर में मीडिया शिक्षा को बेहतर बनाने के लिए विशेष योगदान दिया है। इस श्रृंखला में एमिनेंट मीडिया एजुकेटर के रूप में डॉक्टर गौरी डी चक्रवर्ती को आज सम्मानित कर हम सभी गौरव की अनुभूति कर रहे हैं। डॉक्टर चक्रवर्ती मीडिया और उसकी जो थ्योरेटिकल पक्ष है, सैद्धांतिक पक्ष है, उन दोनों का एक मिले जुले व्यक्तित्व के रूप में पिछले लगभग 2 दशक से कार्य कर रही हैं। आपने FTII फिल्म एंड टेलीविजन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडिया पुणे से ऑडियो विजुअल अपना कोर्स पूरा किया और 1995 से ऑडियो विजुअल इंडस्ट्री के साथ आप सक्रिय रूप से जुड़ी रही हैं। फिल्म और डॉक्यूमेंट्री मेकिंग के अनेक पक्षों से आपका सीधा सक्रिय जुड़ाव रहा है। शिप थीफ एक फिल्म बनी, स्टूडेंट फिल्म डायरेक्टेड बाय आसिफ कापड़िया। 1997 में उनके द्वारा निर्देशित इस फिल्म की आप एसोसिएट प्रोड्यूसर रही। उसके बाद BBC WST के साथ आपने काम किया भारत में HIV जागरूकता, HIV अवेयरनेस को लेकर के जी इंडिया का एक लोकप्रिय कार्यक्रम बेस्ट ऑफ इंडिया, जो मुख्यतः कला और संस्कृति के विविध पक्षों पर केंद्रित था, उसमें आप एंकर और असिस्टेंट प्रोड्यूसर के रूप में लंबे समय तक संबद्ध रही। एक प्रैक्टिसिंग फिल्म मेकर और एकेडमिशियन, शिक्षाविद के रूप में आपने अपना श्रेष्ठ मीडिया शिक्षा को दिया। मीडिया शिक्षा और मीडिया के अनेक पक्षों के साथ साथ आपके व्यक्तित्व का एक अछूता पहलू और है, वो है भारतीय नृत्य परंपरा के साथ। भारत की जो क्लासिकल इंडियन डांस परंपरा है, उसमें आप एक गुरु शिष्य परंपरा से ही प्रशिक्षित हुई है। पिछले 17 वर्षों से आपने एमिटी स्कूल ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन नोएडा में अध्यापन कार्य किया। उसके बाद वहाँ एमिटी में रहते हुए आपने MA फिल्म एंड टीवी प्रोडक्शन और BA फिल्म एंड टीवी प्रोडक्शन, ये दो ऐसे कोर्सेज जिनका वहाँ भारी अभाव था और विद्यार्थियों में ये पाठ्यक्रम काफी लोकप्रिय थे, तो एक बड़े अभाव की पूर्ति डॉक्टर गौरी चक्रवर्ती ने अपनी दूरदर्शिता के माध्यम से किया। एमिटी में ही अपने सेवा काल के दौरान आपने प्रसंग नाम से एक इंटरनेशनल स्टूडेंट्स रिसर्च सेमिनार की श्रृंखला को भी शुरू किया। विश्वविद्यालय अनुदान आयोग, यूनिवर्सिटी ग्रांट्स कमीशन के अनेक रिफ्रेशर प्रोग्राम्स के साथ आपका सक्रिय जुड़ाव रहा और अनेक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठनों के साथ भी आप संबद्ध हैं, जिनमें मुख्य रूप से IAMCR, IAWRT, GRAFTII और एशियन मीडिया एंड कल्चर स्टडीज नेटवर्क, इनके साथ जुड़ करके आपने शोध अनुसंधान और अनेक अकादमिक उपक्रमों के साथ सक्रिय सहभागिता निभाई। अनेक फिल्म समारोह के आयोजनों में आपकी सक्रिय उपस्थिति सदा बनी रही। मुख्य रूप से IAWRT AWFF 2019, इसकी आप फेस्टिवल डायरेक्टर थी। 2020 में आपने लगभग 20 ट्रेनिंग फिल्म्स बनाई वाइल्ड लाइफ क्राइम कंट्रोल ब्यूरो के लिए। डॉक्टर गौरी का विश्वास है कि हम थ्योरी और रिसर्च, सैद्धांतिक और जो उसका शोध परक क्षेत्र है, इनके बीच में जो खाई है, गैप है, इसे किसी तरह से दूर किया जाए। और इस दृष्टि से वो अनेक एक्सटेंशन एक्टिविटीज के साथ जुड़ी रही, सस्टेनेबल एक्टिविटीज के साथ जुड़ी रही और विशेषकर विमेन एम्पावरमेंट या महिला सशक्तिकरण की दिशा में आपका योगदान अतुलनीय है। आपने अनेक राष्ट्रीय अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सम्मेलनों में शोध पत्रों का वाचन किया, प्रस्तुत किए। अनेक पुरस्कारों से आप सम्मानित हो चुकी हैं, जिनमें मुख्य रूप से सेंटर फॉर विमेन एंटरप्रेन्योर्स COWE 2018 में 100 वुमेन फेसेस अवार्ड प्रमुख है। एक पुस्तक का आपने संपादन किया, बैलेंसिंग द विजडम ट्री, एन एनालॉजी ऑफ FTII's विमेन एलुमनाई। लगभग 500 प्रशिक्षित महिलाएं जो FTII से प्रशिक्षित हुई थी, उनके कंट्रीब्यूशंस इस पुस्तक में हैं। और वर्तमान में नोएडा स्थित एक प्रतिष्ठित निजी विश्वविद्यालय बेनेट यूनिवर्सिटी, इसका जो टाइम्स स्कूल ऑफ मीडिया है, वहां आप प्रोफेसर के रूप में काम कर रही हैं। और इसी के साथ इसी यूनिवर्सिटी का यूनिवर्सिटी वुमेन डेवलपमेंट सेल, उसकी चेयरपर्सन के रूप में भी आप काम कर रही हैं। एक ऐसी बहुआयामी व्यक्तित्व के धनी डॉक्टर चक्रवर्ती के इस बहुआयामी योगदान को आज रिकॉग्नाइज करते हुए ग्लोबल मीडिया एजुकेशन काउंसिल अपने इस अंतर्राष्ट्रीय आयोजन में उन्हें सम्मानित कर गर्व महसूस कर रहा है। डॉक्टर कृति।
Thank you so much, sir. May I request Chief Guest Shri Satanshuka to felicitate Dr. Gauri with Eminent Media Educator Award and speak a few words. This was an award video. I do not know how many of you were able to see it. If not, kindly let us know. We can replay it. I request Dr. I request. Are my audience are able to see the video, or we are facing some technical glitch? Gauri ma'am, are you able to see the video?
So, Kriti, I think there is a technical glitch. The video is heavier than the broadband
Yes.
availability. So, don't worry about it at all. It's absolutely
Yes, ma'am. My apologies for the same. I again most humbly request Sri Satanshu sir to have 2 words about Dr. Gauri ma'am.
So, before I get too humbled, please make it as neutral as can be.
So please unmute yourself.
Yes. So I think, Dr. Gauri Chakravarti, it is a remarkable achievement. And in fact, I'm so proud to be part of this celebration today. And you richly deserve this hour for the stellar contribution that you have made in different fields relating to media, and very actively taking part in teaching and also in practical aspects of it. And that is a very stellar achievement, because what we read in theory, in practice, it doesn't happen. But you know, when you go to the field and you are doing the shooting and you are working on it, the theoretical aspects, whatever you are read, probably some of it, I mean, that is useful when it is in the background in your mind, but the challenges on the field are very different. So you have actually achieved something which is really unique, being good in both theory and practice. And we really acknowledge this achievement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Heartiest congratulations to you, Gauri ma'am. Now I request you to kindly address this session, ma'am.
Thank you, Kriti. And I wish to acknowledge the presence of Shri Sanjeev Bhanawatji, Shri Sitanshu Karji, Dr. Tal Pavel, and Dr. Neela Malar. Also, Mayank, who's joined, and if I may call you Mayank. संजीव जी, मैंने अपने बारे में कई लोगों से कई बार सुना है, अच्छा लगता है, लेकिन आज जब आपने कहा तो ऐसे लग रहा था कि जैसे कविता पाठ हो रहा है, और मैंने कभी नहीं सोचा था कि मेरे जीवन में आप जैसे ज्ञानी व्यक्ति, मुझे ये सौभाग्य प्राप्त होगा कि आप मेरे काम का जिक्र करेंगे। सर, ये भी मैं कहना चाहूंगी, जो कि बहुत जरूरी है, मुझे अपनी कला अपने गर्भ संस्कारों में मिली है, and I think this is one bit that we must endorse with youngsters, that there is something that is you are genetically endowed with, and if one can, one should not leave the sight of that vision that is part of who you are. So in the true Indic spirit of learning, I pay my tribute to all the elders who are part of this journey. And I must share with whoever is part of this audience that I entered the media at a very unique time in 1994 as a young person who wanted to embark on creating change and having a voice, and especially as a woman who wanted to have a voice. I chose television as my first platform, and news actually as my first vehicle of action. And over time, I kind of understood that I rather belong to the world of narrative storytelling because of my background in art, rather than hardcore news. But the fascination of pure journalism has stayed with me. And I'd say journalism is, quote unquote, laden with the power of impact. And it still rings in my role as a media educator. I talk to you today from the stance of somebody who's been in the education sector for the last 2 decades. Now, in training students in filmmaking, usually I tend to tilt, from mainstream rather to, asking my students to pick issues that will make them dive deep into the socio-political or the geopolitical aspects of the world. And that is because of the reason that in a very strong way, film is equated with voice in my vocabulary. And I'm blessed to be shaped with a worldview which was driven as a world citizen from narratives which really looked at human in conflict and fiction storytelling, but definitely a very important part of who I was as a media person. Also, Sitanshuji mentioned World War II, and I must share that for Indian students, a lot of what World War II means beyond their history books comes from European cinematic storytelling. Every time we do see a new aspect of that conflict years ago, and it's really important for younger people, to understand that human narrative that emerges with crisis, with conflict, with supremacy of power, and geopolitical dominance. So you rightly said, sir, that Adolf Hitler, a huge part of my course, my any introductory course with my students, whether in journalism or in filmmaking, about how Hitler using filmmaking as a propaganda tool, because we're looking at the 20s and the 30s, using phrases like cinema as the most powerful weapon. Also, on the other side, the Soviet side, where Lenin calls cinema as the most effective educational tool. So those aspects kind of clarify to a young learner, the different aspects of, communicating the sides of conflict and peace, as I would put it. Now, media today obviously has a lot of responsibility of sharing information. And sometimes I have wondered, because I have training in news, that, timeliness and content were told to me again and again when I was a young media aspirant. And sometimes I wonder how timeliness and content seems to override the quote unquote intent of the communicator. So to share my 2 cents, Dr. Leela Malar also talked about the Babri Masjid, and I clearly remember the interaction that my group, a very small group of about 10 to 12 people in 1993-94, had with somebody called Bharat Cam, because Bharat was the only person who shot the video footage for News Track. And if you remember, sir, that was very solid footage, and they seemed to have the only one. And that whole vigor that we felt as young people, being able to tell stories from right the stance of the action. I still remember that emotion even today. And also in terms of another incident that was mentioned, the Mumbai terror attack much later, the way, this is absolutely another point of view, where the way information was communicated using the apparatus, using the technique and grammar of visuals, was really critiqued by filmmakers themselves, because newsmakers had almost added a fictional tone with the kind of sound effects that were used in news bulletins. So these are two elements of the same universe, where on one side you feel the vigor of being at that point of of the conflict, the crisis, and yet on the other side the equilibrium that one needs to use the apparatus and the technique very carefully, because we do agree that this way of communicating through visuals and combined with audio has a great impact on whoever consumes it. I remember damage was created, and in today's world, like Sitanshuji has mentioned, we are seeing constant conflict. And therefore, I think it's really important, sir, to build, the educator side of media education, the training side of it, to kind of refill it with care and caution. And one of the questions that has echoed in my life over the last 3 decades of being in the media is, has been, where is that intersection of life and education? And, can we just label it? Can we just put it in a little, little silo and call, well, we are teaching them life skills or ethics? Because I think that term social responsibility becomes so critical for students to be conscientious and to engage in worthy dialogue, to respect points of view. And I think most importantly, we should train our students to handle situations of conflict when they are there in the middle of action, and also to prepare themselves on how even they can act as peacemakers in times of conflict. So I'd also like to mention that sadly though, for example, when I had entered and I talked about Bharat Cam, and the guy, he had a class on ethics for us. I would say that, in today's day and age, I would say the youngsters maybe have only a very limited number of people and institutions that they can emulate, be inspired from. And I fear really very strongly that the predecessors of these youngsters may carry that heavy burden of tilting towards the edge. It'll be a very heavy burden to carry. Media has a great role in sensitive reporting, in a way in which it doesn't escalate violence, and it's so disappointing. Like Dr. Nilamar Malar was mentioning, how at points of conflict, the Indian media can actually, like you said, provoke and create a jingoism, which probably is not needed, but rather a salient approach to conflict resolution may be needed at that point. So I have been a person who's really delved deep into gender studies. That is my core area of research. I feel very passionately about it. And as when I look at media as a chronicler of these conflicts that we see around us, to me it's very important that one aspect of peace building is also how we raise awareness of reporting on from a different point of view, from the point of view of, let's say, gender or the plight of women during conflict. Because we all know, sir, that in conflict it is the non-male, so to say, who really undergoes stress, and some of they may be at a more vulnerable position in terms of losing their human rights. So I'll be very curious, because there's so much of gender sensitization that is built into education, and in the future it'll be very interesting to see. In fact, why not I say even in the current, that how is gender reported in these conflict zones, and why not, to begin with, maybe just like you said, have more simulation of reporting conflict for a media aspirant. If I was in that position, I'd also build in my media students to interpret more of how much of gender is reported in these conflict zones. And I'd be also curious to know from educators like Preeti, that how many of our students, our trainees, like Sanjeev ji had said that सेना और रक्षा, लेकिन संजीव जी हम मीडिया एजुकेशन में होकर हम तो मीडिया सेना तैयार कर रहे हैं, और मैं ये बहुत उत्सुक होंगी जानने के लिए कि उस मीडिया सेना में जिन लोगों से हम इंटरैक्ट कर चुके हैं, कितने ऐसे यंग लोग हैं जो कि जानते हैं कि इन रिपोर्ट्स इन जोन से कैसे रिपोर्ट करना चाहिए. So that would be something that will be really something that I'd like to put on the table. And because the documentation of this conversation is moving into a compendium there are 2-3 reports that I'd like to mention. For example, there's one report that I read where, related to Kashmir, where the reporters talking about, women coming to journalism schools, but then how many of these women actually have a role in the peace process, the formal peace process, and how much of coverage is there, let's say, given for widows or orphan girls based on conflict. I think this particular report, highlighted one of the key tenets of the gender discourse, which is, the aspect of voice of any non-male member in terms of past struggle and supremacy, when it comes in. Then there's another report that I'd like to mention where, during the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, all of us were so cued in. And there was this very elaborate report on how, women and girls, they are still probably restricted, from social and community movement. And it is expected that they can't, they travel only with a male guardian. And I think, again, a tenet of, the gender discourse, which is the right to mobility and choices, it kind of gets raised in this report. And last but not the least, you were talking about the Ukraine, Russia crisis. And, there's this very interesting report which talks about how we are witnessing women giving birth in metro stations. And one report actually mentions that 80,000 women will give birth in the next 3 months in Ukraine. I mean, just reading that, to me, from that whole point of a storyteller, a trainer in media, it opens so many doors to reflection. 80,000 women will give birth in the next 3 months in Ukraine, and many of them will not have critical maternal health care. Also, Ukraine is also, a geographical space where gender-based violence has been reported, and one can imagine how much that will be aggravated with the current crisis that is going on. So I think if a media student engages with such kind of conversations, at least during their training, it will build a more larger base of their approach to look at conflict. And this particular information nugget that I'm giving, it looks at another tenet of the gender discourse, which is basic human rights, maternal health, right to your own bodies. And it really exposes the vulnerabilities of women and girls. So my only submission will be that I feel responsible for the students who engage with me, though I do not teach them pure journalism. I engage with them with the kind of training that I've had in filmmaking. But at every point, to be socially responsible, to have the correct approach, to kind of navigate through real life experiences seems to be, one of the topmost agendas. And in my life, at least, I must also again thank you for the award to GMEC, to the senior management at GMEC. I would always say that, this award for any media educator, and Kirti will agree, we should always dedicate it to our students, because, they are the ones who kind of make you more empathetic. You become a better human being because of them. And last but not the least, I would like to mention here a personal detail, that I am the daughter of, partition refugees from West Pakistan, and I'm married to a man who's the son of partition refugees from East Pakistan. And I stand on that crevice, that interstice, and from that interstice, I feel pain for both sides of that line. And whenever I look at an issue which needs sensitive reporting or interpretation, I constantly remind myself of the crevice on which I stand. So with that, I'd like to close my conversation, and I'm very grateful again for the award it will it will definitely make me a more humbler person, from tomorrow. It is really humbling. Thank you so much.
Heartiest congratulations to you, Gauri ma'am. And thank you so much for your precious insight. Now we move forward with our book release today. Today we have a book launch of book titled Cargill Review Committee Report, and it is authored by myself. May I request the host, if it is possible, to share the creator. And I'm honored to have Satanshu sir here, who was a part of the research as a respondent and was very kind enough even to write the introduction. The book forward note is written by General Jogendra Jaswant Singh, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, ADC, 21st Chief of Indian Army and 13th Governor of Arunachal Pradesh. May I request Satanshu sir to kindly launch the book and say a few words about this book. Satanshu sir, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kriti. It's a pleasure to launch this book. And in fact, I am confident that it will be a big hit. In fact, such a book was always a necessity. And in fact, when I was the spokesperson for the Ministry of Defense, I felt a strong necessity of such a book, which should be with each and every defense correspondent when they come for the to cover the beat. In fact, the defense beat has become a very popular beat among the correspondents after the Kargil war, and they saw some of their star reporters reporting on this this event, and but there are so many lacunas of it which have been brought out in this Kargil committee report, and that is how in fact I had a role in implementing the recommendations of the committee, and we have gone through it quite diligently, and we did a lot of work on this to achieve it. Now, to talk about this book, although it came out in 2000, and if you look at the media scene around the world, the social media was just starting in at that time. I mean, just around that time. In fact, by 2005, you have this Facebook and YouTube, and then Twitter. They were coming. The report, many people thought that it had become redundant because of the advent of the social media, but that was not so. What was important was that this report gave a framework to work on, and that is how it was carried out. Now, looking at this book, I mean, the qualitative research-based study that Dr. Kriti Singh has done is really tremendous. And she has generated a colossal amount of interesting data. And this book has been trifurcated into 3 books. The first book in the series is beginning with the understanding of the path-making report, the Kargil Review Committee report, which was the turning point in the Indian military media relations. The chapter 1 of the book presents a brief background of the Indo-Pak conflict in Jammu and Kashmir since independence till the Kargil conflict, and sheds light on the multidimensional and multi-layered conflict of J&K. I would emphasize on this aspect of the Indo-Pak conflict because it is so subtle and so complex in nature that a clear understanding of the Indo-Pak conflict as far as J&K is concerned is very important. And I think she has done a yeoman's job in doing that. The chapter 2 presents an overview of the military-media relationship, which is seen as a symbiotic relationship. And in fact, she is talking right from the military-media relations from the American Civil War, 1861 to 65, and then goes on to the war on terrorism, which was from 2001 to 13. And this 152 years of this unique relationship between the military and media. This is remarkable because in the United States, a lot of research has been done on the military-media relationship, which is not so in the case of India. That is mainly because the access to documents and information is very limited in India. And I think she should be given a gallantry award for taking so much of research and doing it bravely. And in fact, she has used all her skill sets to interview enormous number of people who are in one way or the other involved in the matters military and media. And that too, the questionnaires have been so good that they have, she has been able to elicit the best amongst all the interviewees. The chapter 3 is discusses how the Kargil conflict was a turning point, and it deliberates on the changing Indian media landscape during 1999 at the time of Kargil conflict, and it mulls over the positive and negative dimensions of the Indian military media relationship during the Kargil conflict. In fact, if you look at the conflict, there were 2 stages in media reporting. In the first stage, it was random. People getting hold of somebody or anybody and interviewing them. And with that kind of perception, which is a segmented way of looking at the conflict, they were reporting. And that created a lot of dissonance within the Ministry of Defense and among the armed forces. It was at this stage, there was a decision was taken that there will be a joint briefing of the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of External Affairs, and the 3 services together. So, and that is how the media teams were also taken to the theaters of war, and they were able to kind of interact with the officers and soldiers in that kind of environment. So these aspects have been brought out very nicely and analyzed to great effect in this book. The chapter 4 presents a brief overview of the KRC report, and it also highlights the recommendations of the report as it was presented. The final chapter, chapter 5, was actually the one that was that is a gem of a chapter, because it brings out the observations, aftermath, critique, and the present relevance of the KRC report. And here you can see different stakeholders. They are talking to the author and their interviews. Overall, I should say that it is a fantastic book, and in fact, it has come in a very timely manner in the sense that the media has to know what are their roles and how this military media relationship is built, and it should be a good book for the researchers and also the educators. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. You have given more value to my work, and I'm indeed grateful to you. And on a personal note, when I came to interview him, sir was very kind enough, and he was very encouraging throughout. I'm grateful to you, sir. Now we move forward, and we have our corporate speaker session now, in which we have Shri Mayank Singh, Special Correspondent Defense, The New Indian Express. Shri Mayank Singh has been closely covering and writing on national security and defense related matters for more than 17 years. He has covered all uniformed forces under Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Home. His reportage includes ground report from locations like Siachen, LOC, LAC, Ladakh, Sikkim, and Arunachal Pradesh, to name few. He is a prolific exposure of maritime matters with onboard visits to warships and submarines. He has worked with television news channels, defense security magazines like Force, news agencies like ANI, and Asian News International, and newspapers. May I humbly request Shri Mayank Singh to kindly address the session.
It's such a lovely opportunity, actually. And unless I say this, that I'm speaking in front of a person who has seen my journey as a journalist. And that's none other than Sudhanshu Karsar. A person who was like a teacher, a person who was like a guide, and a person who used to mesmerize us every morning. The way the news was being covered, the way the photographs were being used. And unless I say this, whatever I'm going to say, it will get enriched by whatever I'm saying about Sudhanshu sir. And the other part is, if you visit him, as the Kriti ma'am, Dr. Kriti was saying, you'll get lots of nuggets. You'll get lots of insights and the aspects which might remain hidden unless you meet a person whose name is Sudhanshu Karsar. So thank you so much. And it's a great opportunity. I've been hearing to people. And before I talk about media, there are certain terms. And I'm using those terms as memory pegs. I would like to drop them here first, and then I'll start. So there's a term called hybrid warfare. So there's a term called no war, no peace. So there's a term called force multiplier. And what could be as good an example as Kargil? Because if people rush to information, to media, to satisfy their anxiety, so as to gain information, to remove the ambiguity, I think Kargil is one of the moments or a case study which should be studied in terms of Indian context. And Vietnam War of US as it is studied in US. So what Kargil did and why we are talking about role of media in peace building during conflict, the challenges definitely, the technological growth, the way it has shaped things. There are so much of challenge ahead of us. And opportunities, of course, the same media. So what I'm saying is there are certain examples by which I would like to start. And that the other examples are 2014, the ISIS movement. So Iraq, whatever Iraq saw, you know, by that time, social media had come. So media had its own milieu. This media had its own formats. And the traditional media, conventional media was changing. Social media had touched in, and Facebook, Twitter brought in 80,000 fighters from 30 nations. And these are all studied research papers to fight for a cause which ISIS was running. Right or wrong, I'm not saying I'm talking about the use of media, and that also is social media. 2016, another big development took place, and that was election of Trump. So Donald Trump, when he became the president, who did not have strong support within the Republicans, he said it was Twitter which helped him to take his voice to the people who made the difference. But what Sudhanshu sir was talking about in Kargil committee, you know, lots of changes took place after that, by which the strength, the power of media was realized by that time, that it has to be organized. Army, what army is today, with a section called ADGPI, with a PRO sitting there, and a person like Karsar, who was heading all those sections and improving them, has got so well organized today that they have been using with prowess, with skill, ingenuity, the same social media and media. You make strategic communication. And when you make strategic communication, China is on one side, Pakistan is on the other side. I have another good example. So that was 2019. Vartaman had chased the F-16s of Pakistan Air Force, and his aircraft was shot. He had to, he landed in the territory which was Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And suddenly that video started streaming all around. That was around, if I remember, 5:30 in the evening, and I was in the same corridor of the South Block. I was moving around, and there was an officer. I'm not naming the officer because he's serving. He said, "Did you see the video?" I said, "Yes, I have seen it." But ye to galat to nahi hai, because by that time that chai and that body language of Vartaman, which was being portrayed that he has been caught, was getting negative. And here is a person who said that kya ye negative hai? Body language kaisi lag rahi hai tumko? I said, he's very confident. A man who is sitting in a place wherein he doesn't know whether he'll be alive next day, the man is talking with elan, with confidence. And visuals, I'm talking about the strength of visuals, which change by 5:30, by 6, things change, the perspective change. And the term used by Sanshu sir was narrative. It completely shifted that he is a brave man who is sitting inside Pakistan, and he's saying ki chai aise hai, haan acha hai, I will not speak more than this what I'm supposed to speak. It changed the entire thinking of the time. This is what media is actually. Another way the media has changed perceptions is, although it has become a cliche, it has too much used term, which is Sadbhavana, Operation Sadbhavana, civic actions by the CAPFs, which is in left-wing extremism. You know what? These give opportunity of interaction to the people. The photographs which are generated, it creates a different cycle of information. And that definitely has made a lot of change. So here you see hard power, which is military, is turning in using soft power, and all because so that media can also project it that these people are not only to fight against somebody, against the anti-national elements, against the Naxals or Maoists, but here are the people who wear uniform, but they also work for the people. So that was only to change the narrative, negative narrative. The other parts which are important is now branching of social media. That needs to be understood, because unless we talk about it, this hybrid war concept, wherein mix of everything, the war is always on, cannot be understood. So when you talk of social media, why don't you talk of WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram, WeChat, everything? And here is China, which has closed its social media. So when China talks through global media, CGTN, it is talking to the world, not to the Chinese. And why am I quoting this example is what happened after Galwan. They could hide their information. We as democracy were free. We are talking about whatever happened. And that is the kind of confidence which generates with the democratic tools which media is actually. And then later on, lots of videos, photographs talking about the number of deaths within Chinese soldiers, PLA, started coming out. Twitters, all these social media apps, you have got a phone which is hardly expensive. One phone is connecting to millions of the phones with just one photograph. So here you are within fraction of seconds, with low cost, you are addressing the world. That's the strength of social media. With AI, what happens now? This has also to be understood. Now, AI has brought the things to the extent that every individual will receive what the things, the photographs, the videos, information of his or her liking. AI has made this possible. So that is changing perceptions, controlling perceptions, and controlling the thinking. It is to that extent. Now, challenges. if I'm saying that there is a phone which can reach the world with a fraction of a second without having much of a cost, I'm also saying that anybody can be a journalist. One can masquerade information. One can masquerade as a journalist or citizen journalist as well, and keep trusting, keep bombarding information using groups. And BBC 2016 did a story on Pakistan that there was a complete milieu, mix of people who were professionals to push in perspectives, using thousands of handles, wherein the army of social media people was sitting within Pakistan and trusting perceptions. I talked about ISIS. I talked about success of Trump. Let us also talk about Ukraine. If media led to change of perceptions, a positivity, a support to the armed forces, wherein people were providing roti, people were providing puri, they were so much motivated by the media. You know what? It should caution us the way the things have happened in Ukraine and Russia war conflict. Why? It should caution us that RT can be banned. If RT can be banned, in the initial days, YouTube was not relaying the videos which were coming from Russia. Even there was censorship on certain video information on Twitter as well. So tomorrow, if anybody gets angry with India, or it wants to sort out India, they can block your information. That is also a major challenge to the national security of this country. So what do? We need to have more vions. We need to understand that how perceptions at the larger level, when the cover pages of magazines are designed, one photograph can make a huge difference. And in this, I want to show you a photograph of Kashmir around 2017-18. That's a very important photograph. And I wish to share my screen for that. This was right in the mid of stone pelting. And that CRPF person with an insas and with a cane is guarding a person who is offering his namaz. And that was during the time when stone pelting was at its peak. So it was studied, it was analyzed. This photograph was analyzed. This is another thing I have to tell you. 15 days back, suddenly I was bombarded with questions. Mayank, ये तुमने story क्या रखी है क्या? ये कब आई है? This 15 days back I'm talking about. मैंने कहा हाँ ये मैंने story तो की है, but मुझे time भी याद नहीं है इसका. Imagine, entire CAPF group was filled with this particular snippet, and this story was done in 2018. And 15 days back, suddenly it was rolling. The date has been obliterated. I want to highlight here the use of technology. A software can create a complete newspaper. So when you talk of fake, or when you talk of deep fake, when you talk of voiceovers, you can talk of also the videos which are created to lodge disparity, disturbance. These two photographs, I have lots of other photographs, but important was that So there are multiple layers I'm talking of. Technology, the people. Another example which needs to be quoted, and Sudhanshu sir might understand it, he might even laugh at us on that. It's a very interesting example actually. So it was almost 6 years back, we were sitting in South Block and a new reporter came. This is to create, this is also to highlight how media has also want to understand its role. If it doesn't understand, then lots of troubles can be created because of less knowledge, because of less analysis, less understanding, or lack of hard work. So we used to joke at our time that अगर कोई नेगेटिव कुछ होगा तो अगले दिन सितांशु सर कोई मिसाइल फायर करेंगे. But actually this example is to quote you about a missile which was fired, Agni. And there was a reporter who had joined the beat one day before. And next day we were seeing this reporter standing on the ramparts of South Block talking about India-China relationship. And can you imagine? ये मिसाइल शंघाई को भी नेस्तनाबूद कर देगी. This person was not aware that what the person was talking about, is this missile only meant to destroy somebody? Is it a deterrence, the strategic value, the importance, all these things? This example is to make all understand that reporters, the journalists, have major responsibilities, and more so. And as I showed the example of this, my own news, that your own news can be twisted. So I think a lot has been spoken, a lot of things have been spoken. It's a great opportunity. And if any questions I can answer, I would love to answer those questions. And there are lots of hidden lines. There are lots of strands which are coming out as of now. So let us keep talking, discussing. And this is one of the important discussions which has taken place, because media, Sudhanshu sir had also created a course for all the people within the service people. And that was understood only after realizing the strength of media. So today you have got 15 days course, you have got 1 month course, you have got 1 week course, multiple courses to make people aware within the armed forces. By nature, armed forces have to be secretive, but herein you are making them go anti to their own nature. So understand the strength of media. When I said that it's a force multiplier, understand the difficulties of media when you talk about a journalist who has his own layers of understanding and not understanding things, and technology is creating more troubles for us. So peace building, yes, the photographs which I showed you of the CRPF person, one photograph, it was studied, it had gone viral across the world, because by nature people also want to be at peace unless they are fret up with negative images. That's it. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayank Singh, for your valuable insights to the topic. Next, we have our keynote speaker, Dr. Tal Pavel, founder and director at Cyber Bureau, the Institute of Cyber Policy Studies, Israel. He is also head of Cyber Studies, School of Information System Heads at Cyber Studies. I'm giving you his brief intro. Dr. Tal Pavel is the head of cybersecurity studies in the information systems schools at the Academic College of Tel Aviv, Yafo, and the founder and director of a private-owned Institute of Cyber Policy Studies. Dr. Pavel is an academic lecturer, researcher, and speaker specialized in cyber warfare, cyber threats, and cyber policy. He has served as keynote speaker at international conferences and have been interviewed as an expert cyber for major media outlets. He holds a PhD degree in Middle Eastern Studies from Bar Ilan University, Israel. His dissertation topic was changes in governmental restriction over the use of internet in Syria, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and UAE between year 2002 and 2005. Over to Professor Tal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singh, for the invitation. Thank you, all the distinguished speakers and guests. And it's my real pleasure and honor to be here in this very important and interesting event and webinar. And I would like to share my little thoughts on this very important topic on the role of the media. And I choose a topic that I think that Dr. Singh and I have a common interest, which is fake news. And the aim, I hope you can see my presentation, it will be a very, very short one. The essence is, on one hand, to give some examples of fake news that were published around the world in recent years, either in social networks, by friends and colleagues, or by terrorist organization, or even nation states. And on the other hand, to try to see few examples of how can we tackle such fake news, and to demonstrate some examples of the role of the media in exposing such fake news. So with your permission, I'll start. Well, I saw this LinkedIn post by this guy that I know him now. I think even in person I've met him, and he wrote that those 4 pictures are supposed to be from live demonstration or supporters of Trump's after his failure in the presidential elections. So these 4 pictures supposed to be of Trump supporters. I must admit that when I saw them, they looked a bit strange. So it was so easy to do a search in Google Images, and that's what I wrote him back. Thank you so much for this excellent and hilarious example of what is fake news. I will share it with my students. So all 4 images are from Cleveland Cavaliers 2016 NBA Championship Parade. It's so easy to make fake news, and in this case it was very, very easy to reveal that, because on one hand they are not manipulated, they're just taken from the archive of Google. So on one hand, it's so easy to use such images and create this manipulation on our mind. But on the other hand, it's so easy to reveal that, as I did. But there are cases in which we not necessarily are able to know what is true and what is false. The same is in this one, and it's written here in Persian. And it's written here that this is the fake and this is the genuine one. I must admit it, I don't know. I don't know. I only may hope that this is the true one, but I don't know, I must admit. And it's so easy, perhaps by adding or by omitting the chains, and you create completely different story here. So from time to time, it's not so easy to reveal what is true and what is fake. This was supposed to be claimed by Hamas, that they targeted and shoot an Israeli jet airplane. But it's so easy to understand that it's not belong to Israeli Air Force, because it looks like a Russian one needs something. We have none of Russian aircrafts. And when I try to find it, So this image on Google Images, so as you can see, Saudi fighter jet showdown by Yemen's, here the same, all those, but this one's supposed to be that Syria shot down Israeli jet fighter. So whose jet fighter is it? Is it an Israeli one? A Yemen one? I don't know. At the end of the day, it's none of these. As far as I know, it was a crash of Russian a jet fighter during an air show. So none of this is not true. It's an accident. Okay. Another example. This is a poster published by, you can see here the logo, by the military wing of Hamas. And it's written here in Arabic and in poor Hebrew that we will reach you no matter where you are. And you can see that it's manipulated. You can see here that an island, the proportions, you can see the island and the island is in the same height of this diver. It can't be, okay? But the message that we receive from this one is that this command unit is belong to Hamas. Why? Because we see this image and their logo. So the connection we have in our mind is that this is the situation. You don't see me? You don't see the do you see the presentation?
We do. We can see the screen.
You see my screen? Everything
Yes.
is fine?
Yes, everything is fine.
Okay, thank you. So in one of my lectures, someone from the audience, from my student, told me, yeah, I know this picture. And this is the real one. This is the picture. And by the way, they are the Indian Navy SEALs. They are the Navy SEALs from India. But it's so easy to take this image and, you know, a bit of Photoshop, and you give it new geographical dimension. It's belonged to a different organization now. Why? A bit of Photoshop, and then you add the logo. And from now on, they not belong to an army. They belong to a terrorist organization. The same here. This was published, and it's written here in Arabic, Qassam Brigades, and there's the logo. And it's supposed to be a drone that's launching an RPG, okay? Why? Because we see the drone, and it's written here in Arabic, Al-Qassam Brigade, which is the military wing of Hamas, and we see the logo here. So we assume that this drone that may launch RPG is belong to Hamas. But you can see it. This is the image, and it was taken from this link of an Ukrainian company that manufacture this RPG rocket launcher drone. So how easy is to create such manipulation? No Photoshop. You just take the real image, put your logo and your name, and that's it. We have a new weapon. The same is regarding the states. A most famous one, and the war between Russia and Ukraine was mentioned here, is what is called the crucified boy in Ukraine, in which Russia claimed that Ukrainian soldiers, you can see that 8 years ago, crucified the Russian native boy. And of course, it was a total fake. By the way, later it was a report in the major Russian TV station, and later on it was revealed that not only that it's total fake, but this lady, it's not his mother. She is a professional actress. And as you can see in here, an example of disinformation or lies that became the standard for modern mass media. In Russian mass culture, the episode "This Good Piece of Propaganda" became a synonym for journalist fake. And example for like a such a website, Stop Fake Org, struggle against fake information about events in Ukraine. By the way, this website is not from this from the current war. This website go back several years ago. So an attempt to tackle and to struggle fake news in a specific area. Another example is this demonstration, which came after the case of what is called the Lisa case, or our Lisa, with the same thing. That is supposed to be a Russian-German girl, which means a German girl from Russian minority that reportedly allegedly was raped by Arab migrants. In order to create such a fake news, in order to create such demonstrations, such perhaps riots in the streets. So the usage, and of course, the claims is that Russia stands behind this fake news and fake event. And eventually, as can see in here, it creates riots in the streets. Another example is this famous Iranian missile launch tests almost 15 years ago. This is the real one. This is real footage. And this is what they published. And you can see the original and the released one. The released one was made like this. Copy the flame, the smoke here, and copy these missiles, and suddenly you have 100% success, full success of launch of all the 4 missiles, instead of this, that the third one was not being able to launch. Pardon. Another example from Iran is claim from a decade ago, almost a decade ago, of Iranian super stealth fighter jet. And as you can see in here, it can't fly and it's totally fake. You can see it here in the hangar with the lights in green, blue, orange, yellow. And you see the same lights when it's flying in the sky. So it can't be. It's manipulation. They took this image and put it, they copy-paste it. They copy it and from here and paste it on this one. By the way, the claims are that this one cannot fly at all. Okay, let's move on. Some examples from North Korea. You can see this one. And this, which this one look a bit much more gray than this one. Those hoovers and the claim that all those, the 4 that are at the back of their image are totally fake, and perhaps only those 2 or perhaps those 4 but are genuine, but all those 4 are fake. What can the media do? Well, the media can expose such things. The same as was here. This picture featuring 15 tech men and 2 women look doctored. The women were photoshopped in. Well, they didn't take a part in this meeting. There were no women. So they decide to fake it and to doctor it and to put those two images. The role of the media is to reveal such thing, the same as here. Okay, breaking tank has just been stolen and is being driving around Los Santos, and the hashtags Riot 2020 and Black Lives Matter. But, and you can see it's the same one update, we would like to issue a correction. Once again, our sources weren't being honest. The video was shot in 1995. On behalf of our staff, we apologize. Now let's move on. So the role is to reveal such thing, either by others or to admit it's our mistake. This is a something of in Hebrew from economic media outlet in Israel that I found, and I just found this image and I wonder what happened to his legs. This is the image from the article, from this article in Hebrew. And you know, it's something about the acquisition of a company, Mind Source, in $430 million, okay? Something economic and high-tech in Israel. What happened to his legs? And it's looking like there's a shadow here, I don't know what. So, I don't know, it looks strange, but our role is to reveal those cases. Like in Wikipedia, it's very interesting, but there is an article of list of hoaxes in Wikipedia. And you can see that there are those articles that that existed as genuine more than a decade. We need to uncover them. Those articles exist in Wikipedia more than a decade as totally genuine. A bit about technology. We need to use the latest technology, not only by media analysts to uncover, to expose it, but also to use new step to combat disinformation. I mean, to use the latest technology, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth, to combat and to tackle such disinformation and fake news. And the last thing is legislation. As you can see in here, attempts in this case in Singapore to create fake news law that will enable to confront fake news, in this case in Singapore. And the last thing, let us all remember this important quote of Abraham Lincoln, and do not believe everything you see on the internet. Thank you very much. You have here my email address and my cell phone number. Please feel free to address me for every question or remark. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Tal. It was indeed a great insight that you have provided. You will stop sharing your screen, please.
Yes, of course.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Tal. Now, may I request the session chair to conclude this session, please?
Yes, we had a very eventful session indeed. We had the eminent media educator of award conferred on Dr. Gauri Chakraborty. I would like to congratulate Dr. Gauri for the award conferred, as well as the service rendered by her. And then there was the release of book by Dr. Kriti Singh on Corgil Review Committee report. My hearty congratulations to Dr. Kriti Singh also. Then we had wonderful speakers who enlightened us on various aspects. First, it was the chief guest, Shri Sisanshu Ranjankar, who actually very effectively explained the evolution of media coverage of conflicts, how it started with newspapers and how it has extended till social media of today. And then, yes, Dr. Gauri again, she has brought upon a very important concept, that is gender sensitization during the coverage of conflicts. And then we had Mr. Mayong Singh, who, among other things, spoke about and explained, actually, visually explained the power of visuals during any conflict. And our keynote speaker, Dr. Tal Pavel, has just explained to us different instances of fake news. And yes, the one on Ukraine war, that actually demonstrated the importance of stopping fake news. The necessity of stopping fake news on Ukraine war, it seems to be even more important than stopping Ukraine war itself. So, we had such wonderful foresights, inputs brought upon by our speakers. And this discussion, on deliberations will continue in other forms. I like to quote, Ukraine war is a war of our times right now happening. I came across one of the TV news anchors it's an Indian media channel, TV channel. They very effectively, they are covering the, Ukraine war news. And the sort of declaration by the anchor was that he's told, we don't want to do war reporting. It was a real nice, declaration, because they are doing war reporting. But amidst that, he just mentioned, we don't want to do that. And what do we need? We want peace. We want, peace to prevail in Ukraine. Somehow, by some measure, we want peace. That actually sums up how conflict reporting or how war reporting should be. Yes, the journalist has all the rights to cover a war, to cover a conflict, but what should be the objective of that coverage? To bring peace to the people, to bring peace to the nation, and not to capitalize on that and commercialize on that conflict. With this remark, I would like to conclude, and I would like to thank the organizers. I thank Professor Sanjay Banavad, sir, and then I thank Dr. Priti Singh for the invitation. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I'm going to present the vote of thanks. I, on behalf of GMEC, take this honor to deliver the thank you note. First of all, I am grateful to our guests who, despite their hectic schedule, gave us their precious time and valuable insights. I'm grateful to GMEC core members and working group members for their continuous support. A special thanks to Professor Dr. Sanjeev and Professor Dr. Ujjwal Chaudhary. I'm grateful to the backend team, especially Ms. Manushri and Ms. Zainab, for their continuous support to make this event a success. A very special thanks to our participants whose presence have been very encouraging for all of us. Thank you all. Jai Hind. I close this session now.